Hello everyone. Today I have once again the pleasure and honor to speak with one of the most respected military analysts worldwide, former Lieutenant General Ben Hodges. He has been Commander-in-Chief of the US Army in Europe from 2014 to 17. That was the time when Putin has started the war against Ukraine for the first time, when he annexed Crimea and started Donbass. Let me also quickly introduce myself. My name is Christoph Müller. I'm a German musician and caricature artist, and I make videos and interviews here on YouTube for the support of Ukraine. If you like this format, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. This would be of enormous help to get more people to see our interviews. Welcome back to the channel, Ben.
Christoph, thank you for giving me another opportunity.
Oh, it's you who gives me another opportunity. Ben, I was astonished when I watched our last talk. I was really astonished that it was almost a year ago, and so much happened since then. Wow. And today I want to talk to you about the addresses given by US Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth and President Donald Trump in Quantico, Virginia last month, before an audience of 800 US generals and admirals. Let me also add my personal impression right away. Two things in particular shocked me. First, that Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, had the audacity to tell this vast assembly of long-serving military leaders.
Nearly 800 of America's top military leaders were summoned from around the globe, apolitical officers who remained silent as their commander-in-chief took the stage.
That he no longer accepts fat generals, and that today the US military has become a woke military, and so on.
Likewise, it's completely unacceptable to see fat generals and admirals in the halls of the Pentagon and leading commands around the country and the world. It's a bad look. It is bad, and it's not who we are.
And what shocked me even more was later on Trump in his speech. Right at the beginning, he suggested to the generals that anyone who doesn't like it, he can just get up and leave the room.
And if you don't like what I'm saying, you can leave the room. Of course, there goes your rank, there goes your future.
Wow. So how do you process a statement like that, Ben? How would you have felt if you yourself would have been sitting in that room?
Yeah, there were two or three things, Christoph, that came to my mind as I watched this gathering. The first of all, I was proud that these hundreds of generals and admirals and senior sergeants sat there very quiet, very professional, respectful, but there was no cheering or whatever. Yeah. They did not allow this to turn into some kind of a pep rally, which I think is what the Secretary of Defense and the President both were hoping, was that they would stand up and cheer, and there was zero. So this is important because the military, the American people and our allies should be confident that the military is an apolitical institution whose oath is to support and defend the Constitution. So the way they comported themselves really gave me some confidence that they still understand, and they're resisting attempts to politicize the military. That's number one. Number two, I was appalled at the suggestion that rules of engagement don't matter anymore. That rules of engagement, that's a politically correct woke policy. We're not going to do that anymore. I guarantee you that nearly every person in that auditorium would have been horrified by that, because we understand that rules of engagement are necessary to ensure that we fight within a legal context, within the law of armed conflict. That's important not only for our soldiers, but also for allies to be confident that if they have their soldiers fighting alongside Americans, they're not going to get tangled up in war crimes. So that was an appalling statement to me by the secretary. And then, of course, the president's comments about we're going to use American cities as training grounds. Nobody in the military joined the military to use force against their fellow citizens. So those were the three things that really stuck in my mind.
This is going to be a major part for some of the people in this room. That's a war too. It's a war from within.
What really shocked me was as I said, the very first statement of Trump that they could just get up and leave, and here goes your pension. And so he threatens them, and he says, "I need your 100% loyalty, or get away, get out of my way." And this is. Oh, you want to say something?
Well, I was going to say, I think they are more professional. The administration, the president, the secretary, they don't understand the military profession and what it means to be a senior officer with that kind of responsibility. And they don't appreciate how much we value our oath to the Constitution. So when the president said that, of course, it's entirely inappropriate. But I would also say that these officers know that he can't do that. I mean, the president can't just say, "Well, you're going to lose your pension." I mean, you can't just waive that. You know, the Congress has a role to play in all of this, and I think that the appropriate response was to say nothing. But going forward, each of these officers, if they were not sure before that day, they are certain now that the president will ask them or tell them to do things that are going to be borderline illegal. And so this is when they will have to make that decision. Am I being asked to carry out an illegal order? Now, if it's a bad policy, if you don't like a policy, okay. But if it's legal, you have to do it. And if you don't like policy, you can, of course, always submit your resignation. But an illegal order, that's a different story. This is where people would say, absolutely not, Mr. President or Mr. Secretary. We cannot use that, or we cannot do that.
This is always the borderline, how to judge if something is legal or illegal. When the president speaks of annexing Greenland or annexing Panama and stuff like that, is this illegal or is this not illegal? It has to pass the Congress, or can he just, you say he cannot order just the military to do things like that?
I would say that this administration, by the way, every administration has pushed the limits of executive authority. I mean, going all the way back to before Abraham Lincoln, every executive has done this. And so this is where the famous checks and balances between the Congress and the executive branch and then the Supreme Court, where they have to do their job. But I think something like we're going to go conduct an operation to take control of Greenland, for example. This would be a real problem because Greenland, obviously, as you know, is a territory of a NATO ally. And I think anybody that would do a legal review of this would say, you know, this would be a treaty violation. There's so many things wrong with it. But this is also why the administration went through in the beginning and got rid of a lot of the military lawyers, so that the commanders don't have the same amount of legal review assistance that they would have had in the past. And the other problem is, I am so disappointed that so many members of the Congress, including especially Republicans, who were traditionally pro-NATO, pro-transatlantic, and took their oversight responsibilities very seriously, that they're just sitting on their hands. I'm talking about somebody like Senator Lindsey Graham, who is himself an Air Force, a lawyer in the Air Force Reserve. So he knows that this is wrong, and yet he's on the side or cheering for it. So this is part of our problem.
Yeah, this is human behavior, ordinary human behavior. There's very, very rarely there's heroes who stand up against the majority of people. The most of them would just not or keep anything inside themselves. And what really struck me when I saw that, this is the behavior of a guy, a leader. I call him a dictator, wannabe dictator, somebody who wants to gather the military around him and have, or not only the military, to just have 100% loyal people around him.
Yeah,
and this
is the struggle going on in the U.S. right now. Is
absolutely
people. Some people are physically scared. Some people are scared of losing their jobs. Some people are scared of being ostracized. So this is going to be challenging for quite some time, and of course the midterm elections next year. It's going to be ugly getting there because I think the Republican Party knows that if the election were today, they would lose massively in the House of Representatives. So I think you're going to see, we're already seeing um, very rigorous efforts to gerrymander the states to create more safe seats. And I think these will be probably some of the most contested elections in America in a very long time. Fortunately, the states run the elections, so it's still, even if our checks and balances have not worked as well as they should, the federated system still provides security against absolute fascism and a dictatorship.
Yeah. You mentioned already in our last interview that your hope is on the midterm elections. I guess you said that also to different other people, and yeah, your words in God's ear, as we say, that the red states will understand what's on stake. Let me just briefly stick on this thing about dictators. Me as a German, I am really very sensitive to those things, and we learned it at school that dictators they like to stay indefinitely in power.
Sure.
Yeah, they love to suppress all opposition. They tailor-made the partisan judiciary. They suppress freedom of speech. They try to control totally the media, and they have a personality cult, and they need 100% loyalty to them as leaders, and they love other dictators around the world. So Trump loves Putin, he loves Xi Jinping, he loves Kim Jong-un, he loves also Turkey's Erdogan and Hungary's Viktor Orban. So those are all signs that Trump loves to be a dictator. He hates elections. He wants to get rid of that stuff, and so don't the Americans get it? What's going on here? If they will elect for Trump one more time, they will never get rid of him anymore. That's my
Interestingly,
assessment.
yesterday I heard him say that he was asked once again, "Are you going to try and run for a third term?"
Hmm.
And he was pretty simply stating as well, "I can't. You know, the Constitution is very clear on this, so I can't."
He
He
said
said,
that.
he said that. He said, "It's too bad, but I can't." Now, I suppose, I know that there are a lot of people around him in his cult that would love that, but there are probably others who are saying, this is not something that's going to work. I mean, that would be an out. First of all, again, the states have to run the elections, so it's just he would not even get on the ballot in half of the states. So you see what I'm saying? And I think also on the Republican side, I mean, they're looking at a guy who's the oldest president we've ever had,
Mm.
and or he will be by the end of this term, and there's a lot of Republicans that are the next generation that are like, I want to, they're waiting their turn, whether it's Rubio or Cruz or Hawley, all these senators and former senators that are out there, or Pompeo or Nikki Haley, Republicans that are they've been loyal team players. Now they're waiting their turn. And I think there would be a lot of pressure against the idea of him running again.
Yeah, this will not be easy for him, but I have such a feeling that he will try it, even if he says now he doesn't want to do that and so on. This could be kind of a
He didn't
deception.
say he didn't say he doesn't want to.
He said he cannot.
He said he cannot.
Yeah.
Now, of course, he has this habit of teasing, of saying things almost like jokingly, but it gets momentum because he knows there is a part of the population that wants this, and so this is not going to go away. But it's not so easy as yes or no. Do I want to do it?
I I mean, I want me as a German, and I want to, or as a guy who is in a country in Europe which is close to Russia, and they have a dictator. This will be bad if you have a dictator. And I warn every American who sees that here, for example, never vote for a guy like Trump or somebody else who wants to be a dictator. I mentioned that I'm a caricature artist. Did I ever show you my caricature I made about Uncle Sam? I thought I did not show this. Let me quickly show this one to you. So here I drew that when Trump got elected for the second time. Uncle Sam had some itching in his hand, and they don't like it, and so just get rid of that hand that itches. So
well, that's what's at stake, and this is where democracy is not a ballet. I mean, it is a hard football match all the time, and so we can complain about Trump or we can complain about MAGA, but if we don't come up with a better idea or better candidates to run against them, if we don't educate our own population, if we don't make sure that we are able to put forth the best effort in the election and people show up to vote, then you can end up in this kind of a situation. So while we are going through a very challenging time, probably the worst I've seen in my life, and I'm 67 years old, we're still in the fight. And last year, my wife and I, we did some work in the campaigns in the states, and we'll go back again next summer and do the same thing, and encouraging people to make sure you vote, be informed. You can't just be a Zuschauer. You can't just. All right.
The watcher, yeah, it's just like when we have the same situation in Germany. You live in Germany, you see this with the AfD, the Alternative für Deutschland. The most people, they try to elect for first they try that, the Greens, and then they try the SPD and the CDU. It doesn't work, and now let's do the right ones. Let's have a look, and now we pay it back to those other parties who did not do a good job. But they forget that the good parties, they're the democratic parties. They are democratic parties. They follow the rules, but the fascist parties, they don't follow the rules. And if you ever will vote for such a fascist party like the AfD here in Germany, or Le Pen also, but the MAGA Trump people, then you will, as I try to show it in my caricature, you cripple yourself. You hurt yourself you cannot repair it once again. This happened to us in Germany when we elected 80 years ago for Adolf Hitler. We know what came out of that.
But the government has to deliver. I mean, the reason people turn to right-wing extremists or whatever is because they feel that the government is not working, that something's not, they're not being protected, their economy is not good, the infrastructure is not good, so they look for somebody who promises to fix things. Yeah. And so this is where, if we want to have centrist type government, and I think most people actually tend to be centrist or slightly conservative, if you want to have that, then government has to deliver, whether it's a coalition or an outright majority. And, a lot of people voted for Trump because they felt that the previous government did not deliver.
Sure, they were right also.
And so this is where you can't campaign just by saying how bad the other side is. You have to show up. Here's what I am going to do.
Yeah, but you have to deliver. But the problem is that the people believe the lies what those dictators they say.
That's why education and a very strong professional media. Those are so important. If you want to have democracy, voters have to be informed, and they have to feel the responsibility to inform themselves. Mm-hmm. So, I think everything we can do to ensure the best possible education for all of our population, and support in journalism. And everybody gets their news in different ways. Some people listen to podcasts like yours, or they read the FAZ or New York Times or Financial Times, or they watch Takastema, or whatever they watch, or however they get it. That's where we have to compete in that information space. You have to go to where the readers and listeners are. Don't assume that they're just going to come to you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but here the Russians come into play, I think, because we have our traditional media, and they do a fantastic job. I know the journalists, they are really serious about what they're doing, but somehow it happened in our country, and I'm sure in yours too, that the people, great majority of the people, does not believe the established media anymore. They call them the mainstream media, and this is just like a bad word.
Yeah.
And they don't believe it anymore. How could this happen? And my theory is that the Russians stick behind that with their propaganda machine, with their Trollfabrik, Petersburger Trollfabrik. This probably sounds like a conspiracy theory, because when I tell things like that to people who believe in those conspiracy, they ask me, "Do you have proofs?" I don't have. I cannot prove it. But I could, but I have to make a big survey. So
Yeah, I think it is widely known that Russian disinformation plus other sources are, flooding the airwaves, flooding our, filling up our inboxes with disinformation, or the algorithms that Twitter X uses, for example, or TikTok, whatever. But I'm old enough, Christoph, to remember my teacher when I was in the seventh grade. So I was 11 years old.
wow.
Mrs. McKendry was her name, and I grew up in a small town in North Florida, so not a big city, rich school or anything. And back then, of course, there were no iPhones back in 1969. But she told me, she said, Ben, it is your responsibility to always have more than one source. You can't depend on
Yeah.
just one newspaper or one magazine or one TV channel. And those, you didn't have too many options back then. But even then, she impressed me with the importance of it was my responsibility to look at multiple sources. And so my point is, this is where parents and our educational system have to encourage students to look from, and to also to think critically. If you hear something that sounds so terrible or so good, it's like, is that accurate? And then have the intellectual curiosity to find out, and then draw your conclusions. Easier said than done, but at the end of the day, our, certainly in the United States, our democracy was built on the assumption that voters would inform themselves.
Yeah. So absolutely, I had the same experience as a kid, as a child in school already. I remember when you say that. But again, it's so weird that nowadays there is so much doubt, and as we mentioned, the Russians are sticking behind that. That's widely known. But 10 years ago or 20 years ago, it was not widely known. That was just ignored, and they were already active those days. And the mess is nowadays here that there's a big disbelief in the media. I'm also watching the time. We have about 5 more minutes, and we almost did not talk about Ukraine and about.
Well, let me close with this then. Our family motto here is "Machen nicht meckern." You can sit around and complain, but nothing gets better. Go do something. Get involved, and
yeah, it's absolutely right. It's a slower process, and the Russians, they had such a patience. I remember my critical thinking about the Russians I got when I was a boy, because my father, he came from GDR. And he had to flee there because he had to flee the system. Otherwise, they would have imprisoned him, because he was just critical on the government, and he was making jokes about them. And so he heard from a fellow student. Next day, I heard from some other guy I know, for example, and you are in prison. And then my father had to flee, and he was really critical about the Russians. And so I grew up in such. I never couldn't understand why he was so critical, but now I understand. My father's passed away a long time ago. Yeah, and now the Russians, they are attacking everything and trying to destroy everything. And so I think we will not be able to talk more about the other topic, which really interests me and all of us, the war in Ukraine, and also you. But one question on Ukraine, I want to ask you: why is Ukraine still on its fight more or less alone? And why are we so afraid to deliver all the weapons they need?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think if you forget the US, just the EU alone, plus UK, plus Norway, if you combine that, the combined wealth, industry, economy, military, technology, it dwarfs Russia. It's so much more than Russia. So I don't understand why Europe lacks the self-confidence to tell the Russians, no more violations of airspace, no more shadow fleet vessels that are illegal, and you have to withdraw from Ukraine, or we're going to give Ukraine everything they need. That's what should be happening. Of course, the United States should be saying that, and I'm so unhappy that my own government, even during the Biden administration, never said we want Ukraine to win.
Yeah.
And so we never had a decisive, clearly defined strategic objective. And if you don't have a clearly defined objective, then it's very difficult to come up with good policies. And so we wasted the last 3 years, and now the Trump administration is would really rather focus on Western Hemisphere and other things. But at least I don't want to get my hopes up, but it does feel like that Putin has overstepped finally, and that President Trump has finally gotten pissed off enough at the Russians that he is going to start using the leverage he has in terms of sanctions, allowing Ukraine to do certain things. So we'll see. But Europe has to think that it should do this by itself, because if Ukraine fails, it will only be because we failed to help them.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have the Red Army at your door.
This is absolutely true what you say. And the Europeans are lacking some leader figure, somebody. When Friedrich Merz came into office, many people thought maybe he would be the leader, and he had also that strong rhetoric, and especially about Taurus. I was voting Friedrich Merz because he said, I will deliver Taurus. And now what hasn't he done? Deliver Taurus. Why not?
Well, let's see. Of course, he has a very, fragile is not the right word, but his coalition is, he has to deal with that. But you see him. You see Donald Tusk in Poland, Alexander Stubb in Finland, Giorgia Meloni in Italy, President Macron, who also has his own problems, and Prime Minister Starmer. All of these leaders have been very clear about their support for Ukraine.
That is positive.
So I remain more optimistic, but this.
Yeah.
It's going to take everything, not just military, it's economic, legal, all of these things. And this is where our leaders have to speak to us as if we are adults and explain that Russia is at war with us, even if we wish it were not so.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you very much for this final statement here. And we all need to understand what is at stake. Thank you very much, Ben, for giving me again the chance to talk to you. And by the way, anybody who sees this program and likes to support this channel, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, share it. I really need that, because I'm still not in a big number of subscribers. Thank you very much, Ben. And hopefully see you another time, someone. And all the best to you. Thank you very much for your work you're doing.
Thank you. Thanks for the privilege, Christoph.